I walked into my father's backyard that Saturday morning and immediately knew something was terribly wrong. The unicorn cake I'd spent 3 nights baking lay smashed across the patio table, pink frosting smeared everywhere like something out of a horror movie. Purple and pink streamers hung torn from the trees, shredded deliberately. Balloons I'd spent 2 hours inflating were popped and scattered across the grass like deflated dreams. My daughter Lily stood frozen in the corner wearing the handmade pink dress I'd worked double shifts to buy, tears streaming down her beautiful 5-year-old face. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from in the comment below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had family try to betray the trust you have for them. This journey is not a feint of here. Follow me. She clutched her stuffed rabbit, the one she only held when she was scared. 30 guests. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, stared at me with confused, pitying expressions that made my stomach drop. And there, right in the center of this disaster, stood Monica. My stepmother. Arms crossed over her designer blouse, wearing that satisfied smirk I'd come to recognize over the past 2 years. That expression that said she'd won something. "I'm so sorry everyone," Monica announced loudly, her voice carrying across the shocked silence. Hannah apparently canceled the party last minute because she can't afford anything decent anymore. I tried desperately to save it, but just look at this absolute mess she's created. Every single eye in that backyard turned toward me like I was the villain in this story. Like I was the problem, the chaos, the irresponsible disaster of a mother who'd ruined her own daughter's birthday. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The humiliation crashed over me in waves, each one worse than the last. I saw judgment in some faces, pity in others, and awkward discomfort everywhere. Monica had planned this perfectly. Every detail was calculated to make me look incompetent, pathetic, like a single mother who couldn't handle basic party planning. She wanted everyone, especially my father, to see me as a failure. "Maybe next year, sweetie, you should plan something more realistic," Monica said, her voice dripping with fake maternal concern that made my skin crawl. She stepped closer, and the crowd couldn't hear when she leaned in and whispered directly into my ear, her breath hot against my skin, "If you want your father's respect back, you'll have to go through me first." That single whispered sentence broke something fundamental inside me. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry or collapse or give her the dramatic reaction she clearly wanted. Instead, I crouched down beside Lily, gently wiping the tears from her flushed cheeks. "It's okay, baby," I whispered to Lily, keeping my voice steady even though rage and heartbreak battled inside my chest. "Mommy's going to fix everything. I promise." Lily looked up at me with those huge brown eyes, so trusting despite everything falling apart around us. "But my cake, Mommy," she sobbed quietly. "The unicorn is gone." Inside my mind, a quiet vow was forming, hardening like steel. Monica thought she'd humiliated me beyond recovery. She thought this public disaster would destroy whatever dignity I had left, would prove to my father and everyone else that I was incompetent and unstable. She had absolutely no idea what was coming for her. I would make Monica regret this day, but not by yelling or fighting or giving her ammunition to call me crazy. I would be smarter, calmer, more strategic than she could possibly imagine. I stood up slowly, turned to face the confused guests with my head held high, and said clearly, "There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Please give me exactly 20 minutes, and I'll explain everything." Monica's smirk faltered just slightly. She hadn't expected calm. She'd expected me to fall apart completely, and my composure clearly threw her off balance for just a moment. 3 weeks earlier, everything had seemed manageable in my complicated family situation. Monica had married my father 2 years ago, moving into the house where I'd grown up. She was 42, 15 years younger than Dad, with perfect blonde hair and a smile that could charm anyone when she wanted it to. I genuinely tried to keep the peace, to build some kind of relationship with her for my father's happiness. But over those 2 years, I'd started noticing things. Small cruelties disguised as helpful advice. At family dinners, Monica would make pointed comments about my parenting that always landed like tiny knives. Lily would really benefit from more structure and discipline, she'd say with that sweet smile. Single mothers often struggle with consistency, you know. It's not their fault, they're just overwhelmed. My father would nod absently, not catching the condescending edge in her voice. Other family members would laugh it off as Monica just trying to help, just being supportive. But I noticed. Every single time, I noticed the calculation behind her words. So I started keeping a journal, writing down every comment, every subtle insult carefully wrapped in concern, every manipulation I witnessed. When Monica suggested loudly at Easter dinner that I was too emotional and sensitive for making homemade lunches for Lily every day, I wrote it down with the date and witnesses present. Planning Lily's 5th birthday party had consumed my thoughts for 3 full months. I wanted it to be absolutely perfect, her first truly big celebration with our entire extended family present. I'd created detailed spreadsheets on my laptop, color-coded and organized by task and timeline. I'd sent out proper printed invitations with RSVP cards 3 weeks in advance, confirming dates and times with every single guest personally. I'd coordinated extensively with my father about using his spacious backyard, the one with the beautiful oak trees and the patio perfect for parties. Monica had volunteered to help with planning, which should have been my very first warning sign. She'd offered to handle tracking the guest list and RSVPs, promising to keep everything organized and updated. I'd hesitated, my instinct screaming caution, but I'd agreed anyway, thinking maybe this could build a bridge between us. Maybe helping with something important to me would improve our tense relationship. 2 weeks before the party, I'd asked Monica to see the RSVP tracking list so I could finalize food quantities. Oh goodness, I must have misplaced it somewhere, Monica had said casually, waving her hand dismissively. But don't worry at all, Hannah. Everyone's definitely coming. I've been keeping track mentally. Red flags immediately went up in my mind, bright and urgent. I'd quietly contacted every single guest myself after Monica's convenient misplacement of the RSVP list, personally confirming attendance and double-checking that everyone had the correct party details. When Monica eventually realized what I'd done, going around her careful sabotage, her smile had tightened into something sharp and dangerous. You don't trust me, Hannah, she'd said, her voice cold despite the smile still frozen on her face. I'm just being thorough and responsible, I'd replied as calmly as possible, refusing to take the bait. It's my daughter's party, and I need to be sure everything's perfect. Her eyes had flashed with something dark and genuinely frightening for just a split second before she'd recovered her pleasant mask. That moment taught me something crucial. Monica wasn't just casually mean or occasionally jealous. This was deliberate, calculated, and dangerous. I started asking careful questions around the extended family after that incident, reaching out to relatives I trusted. My cousin Rachel had mentioned something vague once about Monica causing problems at her engagement party 2 years ago. What exactly happened? I'd asked during a quiet coffee date, keeping my voice neutral and curious rather than accusatory. Rachel had hesitated, clearly uncomfortable dredging up old drama, then explained how Monica had supposedly accidentally double-booked Rachel's venue, causing absolute chaos a week before the wedding. The whole thing felt deliberately orchestrated, Rachel had admitted quietly, stirring her coffee without looking at me directly. Monica apologized profusely afterward, played the confused helper, but something about it felt intentional. Calculated, you know? I'd contacted my father's older sister Margaret next, asking subtle questions about family history with Monica. Margaret had remembered Monica causing significant drama at Christmas 2 years ago, somehow starting multiple arguments that made other people look petty and unreasonable. She has this particular way of stirring things up, Margaret had said carefully, choosing her words with obvious concern. Then she steps back and plays the reasonable peacemaker while everyone else looks crazy. A clear pattern had emerged from these careful conversations. Monica didn't attack people directly or obviously. She created specific situations designed to make others look bad, incompetent, or unstable, then swooped in as the reasonable, helpful, stable one everyone should trust. She'd successfully done this multiple times before, and now I was clearly her next target. She wanted to systematically humiliate me in front of my entire family, to make my father see me as an incompetent disaster who needed Monica's guidance and control. But knowing her established pattern gave me significant power. I could predict her moves, prepare defenses, and document everything carefully for the inevitable confrontation. One quiet morning exactly 1 week before Lily's party, I'd watched Monica interact with my daughter during breakfast at my father's house. Lily had worn her favorite sparkly unicorn headband, bouncing with excitement about her upcoming birthday celebration. She'd looked adorable and happy, exactly how a 5-year-old should look. "That's quite a fancy accessory for just a regular Tuesday morning," Monica had said, her voice sugary sweet but with an edge underneath. "Your mommy certainly likes wasting money on unnecessary, frivolous things, doesn't she?" Lily's excited smile had faltered immediately. She'd looked at me with confusion and hurt, not understanding why something that made her happy was suddenly wrong. I'd smiled gently at my daughter, refusing to let Monica's poison take root. "Lily, you look absolutely beautiful, sweetheart. Fancy isn't wasteful, fancy is joyful, and you should always embrace joy." Monica's jaw had tightened noticeably, her fake smile slipping for just a moment. Later that afternoon, I'd found Lily's beloved sparkly headband in the kitchen trash can, deliberately thrown away. When I'd calmly retrieved it without saying a single word to Monica, she'd watched me with narrowed, calculating eyes. She'd been testing boundaries, seeing exactly how much cruelty she could get away with before I exploded and gave her the dramatic reaction she needed to prove I was unstable. But I wasn't going to give Monica the explosive, emotional reaction she desperately wanted and needed for her narrative. Instead, I'd started systematically documenting absolutely everything, creating an evidence file that would eventually become undeniable. I took photos of the headband in the trash with timestamp metadata. I started keeping my phone nearby during all family gatherings, recording conversations when legally possible. I saved every text message where Monica made subtle, cutting remarks disguised as concern or helpful advice. I was carefully building a comprehensive case, not for any legal court, but for the court of family opinion and truth. The recordings proved absolutely invaluable as Monica's behavior escalated. 3 days before Lily's party, during a family dinner at my father's house, Monica had told Dad within my hearing, "Hannah's been so incredibly stressed about this party. I'm genuinely worried she's completely overwhelmed and might be heading for some kind of breakdown." My father had looked concerned, his forehead creasing with worry. "Is everything okay with you?" he'd asked me directly. "Everything's absolutely perfect, Dad," I'd said calmly, confidently. "I have every single detail organized and under control." Monica had smiled that fake supportive smile. "Of course you do, sweetie. I just want to help if you need anything at all." After dinner ended, I'd overheard Monica on her phone in the hallway, not realizing I was nearby with my phone recording. "The party's definitely going to be an absolute disaster," Monica had told whoever was on the other end of that phone call, actually laughing. "Hannah genuinely has no idea what she's doing. This whole thing will be entertaining to watch. She'll completely fall apart in front of everyone." My phone had captured every single cruel word in clear audio. I'd realized in that moment that Monica wasn't just jealous or insecure about my relationship with my father. She actively, genuinely enjoyed causing other people pain and humiliation. That recording had become the very first piece of my growing evidence collection. I'd labeled it carefully with date, time, and context, then stored it securely in multiple backup locations. Monica thought she was being clever and strategic, but she was actually being careless and overconfident. The morning of Lily's 5th birthday had arrived bright, sunny, and full of promise. I'd arrived at my father's house at exactly 7 a.m. to begin setup, my car loaded with decorations, supplies, and carefully planned activities. Balloons in purple and pink, Lily's absolute favorite colors, soon floated throughout the backyard, tied to trees and fence posts. I'd arranged multiple game stations, set up the gift table with beautiful wrapping, and placed the unicorn cake I'd spent 3 nights perfecting prominently on the decorated dessert table. Everything looked absolutely magical, like something from a children's storybook. Guests had started arriving promptly at noon, right on schedule. Lily had run around the backyard in her special pink dress, giggling and playing with her cousins, her face glowing with pure 5-year-old happiness. Monica had stood near the back door of the house, watching me with that particular wolf-like smile I'd learned to recognize. She'd worn a beautiful white designer dress, looking elegant and perfectly composed to everyone else. To the other guests, she'd appeared helpful and supportive, the caring stepmother. But I'd seen her eyes constantly tracking my movements, waiting and watching for something specific. "Everything looks absolutely lovely," she'd told several arriving guests very loudly, making sure everyone heard. I helped Hannah plan every single detail of this party. It was a small lie, but positioned perfectly to take credit for all my hard work. I hadn't corrected her statement or argued. Not yet. Let her think she was winning and in control. An hour into the party, with games in full swing and laughter filling the air, Lily had come running to me with tears streaming down her face. "Mommy, where did all my presents go?" she'd sobbed, confused and heartbroken. I'd placed all the beautifully wrapped gifts on a specially decorated table near the patio, arranging them carefully that morning. Now the entire table sat completely empty, not a single present visible anywhere. "They were right here an hour ago," I'd said, genuinely confused and starting to feel real concern. Monica had appeared beside me almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Oh no, did someone carelessly move them? How terribly unfortunate and disorganized." I'd found all the missing presents 15 minutes later, deliberately hidden in the garage behind dusty gardening equipment where no one would casually look. When I'd carried them back out in armfuls, several guests had definitely noticed the strange disruption and were whispering. "What happened to the gifts?" my father had asked, looking confused and concerned. "Just a simple misunderstanding," I'd said calmly, deliberately shooting Monica a brief knowing look. She'd smiled innocently, perfectly playing her part. But I'd specifically seen her slip away toward the garage earlier, and my cousin Rachel had seen it too. She'd raised her eyebrows at me meaningfully from across the yard, a silent acknowledgement that she'd witnessed Monica's suspicious behavior. Monica's deliberate interference was gradually becoming visible to those family members who were actually paying close attention. I hadn't made any kind of dramatic scene or accused her publicly. I'd simply, calmly restored order and continued with the party, knowing deep inside that composure and patience would ultimately serve me far better than explosive anger ever could. As I'd carefully set up the gift table again, repositioning each present, Monica had raised her voice near a large cluster of gathered guests. "I specifically told Hannah weeks ago that we should have hired a professional party planner, but she absolutely insisted on doing everything herself. Some people just cannot admit when they desperately need help." Several relatives had turned to listen to her performance. "Party planning is incredibly stressful," Monica had continued, shaking her head sadly. "Especially for single mothers who are already juggling absolutely everything alone. I've tried so hard to support her, but Hannah's very proud and won't accept help." The deliberate implication had hung heavy in the air. I was disorganized, completely overwhelmed, barely managing basic responsibilities. Some guests had looked at me with obvious pity. Others with mild judgment, wondering if maybe Monica had a point. I'd felt heat rising in my chest, the powerful urge to defend myself, to explain loudly how Monica had sabotaged everything deliberately. Instead, I'd taken a deep breath, smiled calmly, and said simply, "Thank you so much for your concern, Monica. Everything's perfectly under control." My unexpected restraint had clearly confused her. She'd obviously expected me to snap defensively, to look unstable and emotional in front of everyone. My calm, composed response had completely undermined her carefully constructed narrative. I'd seen genuine frustration flicker across her face before she'd quickly recovered her sympathetic smile. When the time had finally arrived to sing Happy Birthday, we'd all gathered around the beautiful dessert table. Lily had stood beside the unicorn cake, her eyes absolutely shining with pure excitement and joy. As I'd reached carefully to light the 5 candles, Monica had suddenly bumped into the table, hard and deliberately. The entire cake had tipped sideways dramatically. I'd caught it just in time with both hands, but the top decorative layer had smashed completely into the base, utterly destroying all the careful decorations I'd spent hours creating. Pink and purple frosting had smeared everywhere in a horrible mess. Lily's happy face had crumpled instantly. "My unicorn cake," she'd whispered, fresh tears forming in her devastated eyes. All the guests had gasped collectively, shocked. Monica's hand had flown dramatically to her mouth in perfect fake horror. "Oh my God, I'm so incredibly sorry. How clumsy of me." But I'd seen her eyes in the split second just before impact, cold, calculated, absolutely purposeful. She'd destroyed my daughter's birthday cake completely deliberately, not accidentally. I'd pulled Lily close against me, comforting her while my own heart completely shattered into pieces. This wasn't just about humiliating me anymore. Monica was genuinely willing to break my innocent daughter's heart just to win whatever sick, twisted game she was playing. That terrible realization had hardened something fundamental deep inside me. I wouldn't just expose Monica to the family. I would completely, systematically dismantle her entire world. Later in the afternoon, while guests awkwardly ate pieces of the smashed, ruined cake, my cousin Rachel had pulled me aside to a quiet corner of the yard. "Hannah, I clearly saw what Monica did to that cake. That absolutely was not any accident." I'd looked at her carefully, grateful but cautious. "You noticed it too?" "I've been watching her behavior all afternoon," Rachel had admitted quietly. The presents mysteriously appearing in the garage, those pointed comments to guests about your competence, and now deliberately destroying the birthday cake. She's sabotaging you completely on purpose. Relief had flooded through me like cool water. I wasn't crazy or paranoid. Someone else had independently seen the truth too. "She's been systematically doing this for weeks now," I'd confided very quietly. "Making me look incompetent to Dad and everyone else in the family." Rachel's expression had darkened with anger. She did something remarkably similar to me 2 years ago at my engagement party. I never fully understood why until right now. We talked quietly for 20 minutes, carefully sharing observations and experiences. Rachel had agreed to help me document Monica's behavior going forward. She'd noticed things I'd completely missed. Monica whispering privately to certain relatives, spreading subtle rumors, skillfully manipulating conversations to control narratives. With Rachel as a trusted ally, I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. Together, we'd be impossible to dismiss as just emotional, unstable women overreacting. Over the next hour, I'd quietly, efficiently fixed what I could salvage. The beautiful unicorn cake was completely ruined beyond any repair, but I'd brought backup cupcakes. Monica hadn't known about those emergency supplies. I'd arranged them on a fresh platter, and Lily's sad face had brightened considerably when she saw them. "Surprise extra special dessert," I'd announced cheerfully to all the guests. The presents I'd rescued from their garage hiding place got properly distributed to their rightful table. All the games I'd carefully planned went forward smoothly and successfully. Slowly but surely, the party had recovered its joy and energy. Lily had started laughing again, running and playing happily with her young cousins. But I'd noticed Monica watching everything with growing, visible frustration. Every single problem she'd deliberately created, I'd solved quickly without any drama or emotional outburst. Every calculated attempt to make me look incompetent had backfired because I'd stayed calm, resourceful, and composed throughout. She'd expected chaos and emotional breakdowns. Instead, she'd witnessed quiet competence and grace under pressure. By mid-afternoon, several guests had specifically commented to me about how wonderfully everything had turned out despite all the unfortunate accidents. Monica's face had grown progressively tighter and more pinched with each sincere compliment directed my way. She clearly hadn't counted on my resilience or my refusal to fall apart on schedule. What Monica definitely didn't know was that my cousin's husband Ethan had been carefully recording extensive party footage for a family video throughout the entire afternoon. His camera had captured Monica deliberately, forcefully bumping the cake table, and her cold, calculated expression in the moment just before impact. The footage had caught her furtively moving the presents toward the garage when she thought absolutely no one was watching her. The video evidence was completely damning and undeniable. Ethan had shown the footage to Rachel first, who had immediately shown it to me in private. "Do you want a copy of this?" Ethan had asked quietly, seriously. "Yes, absolutely," I'd said firmly. "But please don't mention it to anyone else yet." This video evidence would prove crucial, visual, undeniable proof that Monica's various accidents were entirely intentional and malicious. Combined with my voice recordings and thoroughly documented incidents, I was steadily building an absolutely undeniable case. But timing mattered critically. If I exposed Monica too soon, too impulsively, she'd have time to spin the narrative differently, play the misunderstood victim, and manipulate my father's perspective. I needed to wait patiently for the absolutely perfect moment when her credibility would shatter completely and irreparably. Over the following week, I'd started strategically leaving subtle evidence around my father's house, carefully chosen pieces that only he would naturally discover. A printed copy of Monica's text messages to various relatives, falsely warning them about my supposed mental instability. An email thread where she'd attempted to secretly cancel the party venue without my knowledge or permission. My detailed party planning spreadsheet, clearly showing every single task I'd completed weeks in advance with timestamps. I hadn't presented any of these documents to Dad directly or made dramatic accusations. I'd simply left them where he'd discover them naturally during his normal routines, on his home office desk, in the household mail pile, bookmarked obviously on the family computer. Each carefully chosen piece told part of the larger story. Monica wasn't actually helping me at all. She was systematically, deliberately sabotaging me. And she'd been doing it methodically for weeks and months. I'd wanted my father to reach his own conclusions independently, to see the truth clearly without me appearing vindictive, emotional, or manipulative. The cold, hard evidence would speak for itself far more effectively than any emotional speech I could give. Monica's overconfidence had grown substantially over the next 2 weeks following the party. She'd genuinely believed she'd successfully damaged my reputation beyond any repair. At a family dinner, she'd told her friends loudly, "I basically run this entire household now." Hannah's father finally sees clearly that I'm the stable one, the responsible, mature one everyone can trust. She hadn't realized my father was listening intently from the nearby hallway, his expression unreadable. Monica had continued carelessly, actually laughing. "Hannah's so incredibly easy to manipulate. She actually thinks people believe her pathetic little victim story. Single mothers are so predictable, always stressed, always emotional, always desperately needing rescuing from themselves." I'd been there too, deliberately hidden in the kitchen doorway with my phone recording every single cruel word. Monica was finally revealing her true nature, her genuine contempt for me, her calculated cruelty that she normally hid so carefully. She'd actually boasted to her friend about fixing the birthday party disaster, meaning she'd deliberately created it for entertainment. Every careless word she'd spoken was digging her grave progressively deeper. I'd saved the recording immediately, labeling it carefully and backing it up. Monica's arrogance and overconfidence were rapidly becoming her ultimate downfall. The major breakthrough had come during a family barbecue 2 weeks later. Monica had completely rearranged my father's garage without asking anyone's permission, throwing away several items that clearly belonged to me, including multiple boxes of Lily's precious baby photos I'd stored there safely. When I'd discovered them in the trash, I hadn't confronted Monica immediately or emotionally. Instead, I'd calmly asked my father, "Dad, did you specifically tell Monica to clean out the garage?" "No, I didn't," he'd said, looking genuinely surprised. "Why do you ask?" I'd shown him the baby photos, dirty but recoverable. These were in clearly labeled storage boxes with my name on them. His face had changed dramatically, confusion shifting into visible anger. "Monica specifically told me you'd asked her to organize the garage because you were too overwhelmed to do it yourself." That was a direct, undeniable lie, and we both knew it absolutely. I never said that to her, I'd replied very quietly, letting the lie speak for itself. My father's eyes had hardened noticeably. For the first time, he was seeing Monica's systematic manipulations with complete clarity. The small lies, the false narratives, the cruel actions disguised as helpful concern. One clear, undeniable, direct deception had finally cracked his perception of her completely. What I'd discovered next had changed absolutely everything. My Aunt Margaret had mentioned privately that Monica had approached her, offering her actual money to support Monica's false version of events at family gatherings. She said you were mentally unstable, Margaret had told me seriously. That the family needed to present a united front to help you for your own good. She offered me $200 cash to back up her concerns about your parenting abilities. Margaret had refused immediately, but the attempted bribery was absolutely stunning. I'd asked if she'd be willing to testify to this conversation if needed. Absolutely, without hesitation, Margaret had said firmly. That woman is genuinely dangerous. I'd carefully recorded Margaret's detailed statement, adding it to my constantly growing evidence file. Monica wasn't just mean or jealous. She was systematically trying to isolate me, turn my entire family against me, and position herself as my father's savior and my replacement. But her methods were sloppy and overconfident. She'd badly underestimated how many people actually cared about me, and how far they'd go to expose her. For the next 3 full weeks, I'd acted completely normal around Monica, friendly, cooperative, entirely unsuspecting. I'd complimented her cooking, asked her advice on minor household matters, and smiled warmly during family events. Monica had visibly relaxed, believing she'd completely won. Her careful guard had dropped entirely. She'd made increasingly careless comments, sent more revealing text messages, and treated me with barely concealed contempt when others weren't directly watching. But I was always watching. And recording. And collecting every single piece of evidence I needed. Rachel and Ethan had helped me organize everything into a clear, chronological, undeniable presentation, thoroughly documented incidents, voice recordings, text screenshots, video footage, sworn witness statements. The comprehensive case against Monica became absolutely ironclad. I'd chosen the venue very carefully, the monthly family gathering at my father's house, when everyone would be present simultaneously. Monica had absolutely no idea what was coming. The family gathering had arrived on a sunny Saturday. 20 relatives had filled my father's living room and backyard. Monica had played hostess, confident and charming to everyone. I'd waited patiently until everyone had settled comfortably with food and drinks, then I'd stood up. I need to share something extremely important with everyone here. The room had quieted instantly. Monica had looked curious, slightly amused. She'd thought I might finally break down emotionally, cry about how hard everything had been, giving her another perfect chance to play supportive stepmother. Instead, I'd pulled out my tablet computer. Over the past 3 months, I've carefully documented some very concerning behavior. I want everyone here to see the complete truth. I'd played the recording of Monica cruelly mocking me at her dinner party. Her voice had filled the silent room. Single mothers are so predictable. Always stressed, always emotional, always desperately needing rescuing from themselves. I'd shown the video footage of her deliberately destroying Lily's birthday cake. I'd displayed screenshots of her attempts to bribe Margaret. The room had fallen completely silent. Shock had registered on every single face. Monica's confident smile had crumbled visibly. This is absolutely ridiculous, Monica had sputtered desperately. Hannah's clearly having some kind of serious mental breakdown. She's fabricated all of this because she's pathologically jealous that her father and I are happy together. But I'd anticipated her exact defense. I'd played more recordings, her own voice clearly admitting to various sabotages, laughing about causing chaos and pain. I'd shown dated text messages proving her lies. I'd presented sworn witness statements from Rachel, Margaret, and 3 other relatives who directly experienced Monica's manipulations. Every single piece of evidence was timestamped, verified, and completely undeniable. My father had stood frozen, his face pale. He'd looked at Monica with an expression I'd never seen before: betrayal, disgust, and dawning realization. "You told me repeatedly that Hannah was unstable," he'd said slowly. "You said she needed professional help, that I should consider limiting her access to family events. You've been lying this entire time." Monica had tried to touch my father's arm, her face desperate. He'd stepped back sharply, away from her. "Don't touch me." The aftermath had unfolded swiftly and completely. My father had asked Monica to leave that very evening, packing her belongings immediately. Extended family members, seeing all the undeniable evidence, had stopped taking her calls entirely. The friends she'd manipulated with lies had learned the truth and distanced themselves permanently. Within just days, Monica's carefully constructed image had shattered completely and irreparably. She'd tried calling me repeatedly, leaving voicemails that swung wildly between threats and tearful apologies. I'd saved them all but hadn't responded once. She'd lost her power over my father, over the family, and over me. My father had apologized privately, devastated that he hadn't seen the truth sooner. "I should have protected you," he'd said, tears in his eyes. "I'm so incredibly sorry." "You didn't know, Dad," I'd said gently. She was extremely good at hiding who she really was. We'd begun rebuilding our damaged relationship slowly, honestly, carefully. For the first time in 2 long years, I'd felt genuinely safe in my father's home again. 3 months later, I'd moved into a small house with Lily, our own space, peaceful and full of light. I'd hosted a make-up birthday party for my daughter, intimate and absolutely perfect. Just close family who truly loved us. The unicorn cake had turned out beautifully this time. Lily's laughter had filled every room. My father had attended, helping hang decorations and playing games enthusiastically with his granddaughter. He'd filed for divorce from Monica, finally seeing her for who she'd always been. As I'd watched Lily blow out her candles, surrounded by people who genuinely cared, I'd felt profound peace. Monica had tried to destroy me, to humiliate me, to isolate me from family. Instead, she'd destroyed herself. I hadn't needed to yell, fight, or sink to her level. I'd simply been smarter, calmer, and more honest than she'd expected. Truth had been my weapon, and patience my strategy. Monica was gone, her influence erased. And I'd built something beautiful from the wreckage, a life where my daughter would never again watch someone smash her birthday cake while adults whispered and judged. We were safe. We were home. We were finally free. 6 months after everything had ended, I stood in our little house watching Lily play in the backyard. She was laughing, completely carefree, the trauma of that ruined party fading into distant memory. My father visited twice a week now, our relationship stronger than it had been in years. He'd learned a hard lesson about trust and manipulation, and he'd apologized 100 times. I'd forgiven him completely. Monica had tried contacting me one last time, a long email full of excuses and blame. I deleted it without reading past the first paragraph. She didn't deserve any more of my energy or attention. I'd heard through family that she'd moved to another state, her reputation in our community completely destroyed. Sometimes justice wasn't about revenge or punishment. Sometimes it was simply about truth. I'd exposed Monica not because I hated her, but because I loved my daughter and refused to let a cruel woman poison our lives. The story could have ended with me crying over a smashed cake, humiliated and defeated. Instead, it ended with us here, safe, happy, and free. I'd learned that the quietest voice could be the strongest one, and that patience and truth would always outlast manipulation and lies. Monica had underestimated me completely. And that had been her biggest mistake. This story teaches us that integrity is the hallmark of life. Love and respect keeps the family moving forward. Have you ever watched someone's true character get exposed by a wicked act? Share your story in the comment below.